So now let's talk about the trade war between the United States and Canada, because Canada is striking back. Just this afternoon, while we were on air, the Finance Minister of Canada, Francois-Philippe Champagne, he announced retaliatory measures against America.
Today I'm announcing that Canada will match the United States tariffs dollar for dollar, rate for rate. Effective September 8, Canada will impose counter tariffs of up to 15, 25 or 50% on $27.6 billion in imports from the United States of America. For each product, our tariff would match the American tariff on the same type of Canadian good.
And it would add up to a hit of some $27 billion against American trade. So yes, this is really, really warming up. And meanwhile, President Trump, he's having a shot at the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford, who is not exactly a big admirer of Donald Trump.
You know, your own people, President Trump, don't even like you. And they're going to speak loud and clear when it comes to the midterms. And if I was allowed to, I'd be down there door knocking. I've dealt with guys like you my whole life. And guess what? You all become losers because you're a loser. I have more courage, more brains in my baby toe than he has in his whole body. I've been in this game a lot longer than he has. I got skin on me like an alligator. And you think an insult from him hurts me? Well, bring it on, buddy. I'm ready. Bring it on. I have a lot of real estate on my ass, so he has a lot of room to kiss my ass.
Okay, and if you were offended by that language on the part of the Ontario Premier, as no doubt Donald Trump was meant to be, apologies on our side. Let's now welcome Gavin Bade, the Wall Street Journal's trade and economic policy reporter. Hello to you, Gavin.
Hi, John. We're back again.
We're back again. And if we didn't know already, and we did, it's not just business. This is personal, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think, you see Premier Ford there really trying to get under Trump's skin and the skin of his team and play, some rhetorical games that Trump plays as well. I think, this is just part of the escalation that we see happening that could explode into a broader trade conflict between these two countries. We're not there quite yet. The new U.S. tariffs only cover about 5% of Canadian exports to the United States. But then you see a retaliation happen, then they retaliate against our retaliation, and it's easy to see how this thing could spin out of control.
And it's likely to happen that way, isn't it, Gavin? Because, the President and the administration have already made clear if Canada comes back at us, we'll go back at them again, and so on and so on.
Indeed, but there's an interesting wrinkle here. So yesterday, President Trump, after Canada said they would retaliate, President Trump said, okay, I'll retaliate again. And he threatened to increase tariffs on Canadian automobiles to 50%, and also increase some of the steel tariffs that haven't been about 50% up to 50% as well. Here's the thing, though. Those tariffs would only take effect in January of next year. So we're talking more than 4 months from now. And that signals to me that the Trump administration is saying to Carney's government, you can come back to the table, we can start these discussions again, because obviously having an escalatory trade war right now would not bode well for Trump and the Republicans in the midterm elections. There are a number of states that have competitive Senate elections, House races as well, and that trade war with Canada is not popular there. And
we have seen in the course of this tariff story, we've seen the president put his foot on the gas and then hit the brake very, very shortly afterwards when the counter pressure gets very strong. But what on earth do you make, and I think I know the answer to this, what do you make about this curious turn in the tone of the rhetoric when you have President Trump talking about renaming Lake Ontario and calling it Lake America? It sounds almost childish, but maybe we should be used to that.
It sounds almost childish. I think he's done kind of rhetorical turns like this, whether it was on Greenland or the Gulf of Mexico / America. But I think that what your listeners should know is that this is what they do when they don't have substantive policy actions to take in response here. And so these are kind of distractions. They're things that Trump thinks up on his own or with some close aides, just while he's sitting in the residence sometimes. And that when those things are happening, it's good to watch the ball ball rather than the player, right? What are the actual policy actions that are happening? Right now, there's only new U.S. tariffs on 5% of Canadian exports to the U.S. The next U.S. retaliation doesn't happen till January. And yesterday, we saw J.D. Vance, Scott Bessent, both say that we could come back to the negotiating table. So while there is a war of words, and Trump and Ford love to get at each other in that way and love to try to assert themselves as dominant in this relationship, I think, when you look at the policy actions, we could see cooler heads prevail in the months to come.
Okay, that is useful perspective. Gavin Bade at the Wall Street Journal, thank you. But of course, there is a cost. There is a price to be paid for what's happening right now. And let's talk to Matt Johnson about that, who's the chief executive and the co-founder of Collective Arts Brewing. That's an independent craft brewery in Ontario. Hello to you, Matt.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. What are you thinking watching this play out, Matt?
I'm thinking I'm happy to see Canada standing up to a bully. There's no really better way to say that. Donald Trump is, effectively has been able to push everyone around, and they've conceded. So it's nice to see Mark Carney and the government stand up.
All right. Now, what does it mean for your business, your corner of the drinks industry? How's it affecting your operations and your sales?
Yeah, we have a decent amount of sales that ship to the United States. They will be disrupted significantly. It will be really tough for us to absorb that margin. So we'll likely have to manage our way with next to no margin and work with our distributors to be supportive through that. But we'll stand tough and really focus on maintaining the business we've established over the last 10 years in the U.S., but really focus on domestic growth. We've diversified our business across different beverage categories, and then to be honest, international, and a focus that was a significant piece of our business prior to the pandemic that also disrupted that. But we're having more and more distributors reach out to us as they're less interested in carrying American products and see Canada as a friendly ally.
Yeah, look, this tariff war is intended on the American side to squeeze businesses such as yours. Are you having to think of anything drastic, like maybe moving some of your operations to America?
Yeah, we're definitely trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid playing into Trump's hands. So we'll do everything we can to keep it all, produced in Canada, and then, as I say, look to diversify. Canada. It's a bit of a wake-up call for Canada, and should be for the rest of the world. Most of our shelves are dominated by American products. Even if they're produced here locally, the value to the Canadian economy is about 6 times less to have a multinational producing here because they're taking the profits back. So for us, hopefully we're going to see Canadians rally behind the flag and not only purchase Canadian-made, but also Canadian-owned products.
I mean, you need a bit of buy Canadian in the minds of your customers. Is there a good sign of that happening?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the ratcheting up of this will cause people to lean in. I think, before, you don't know whether this is rhetoric, the escalation, or if it will be real. Now that it is real, I expect to see consumers really rally behind that. And as I say, we're going to ratchet up our shipments internationally as well.
All right. Matt Johnson, good to talk to you, who is the boss at Collective Arts Brewing. That's an independent brewery in Ontario.